The man paid 20,000 for a rotten floor to get married, but just as he opened the door, he was locked out of his home. He twisted the door lock so hard that it was broken. He got a tool to pry it, kicked it and hit it with his body, but the door wouldn't open. He rushed to use his mobile phone to call for help, but as soon as the call was answered, the phone ran out of battery. He rushed to recharge it, but coincidentally the socket in the house was also dead. The man instantly panicked and had to continue smashing with his tools, but unfortunately his hand was again bruised. Then he went to the window and called for help. But he was on the 35th floor, and the security guard downstairs couldn't hear him. Then he got on the doorstep again and called for help, but there were no other residents in the rotten building. He took the phone battery out again, and put it on his trousers, and rubbed it hard in the hope that it would rub up electricity. Then he put it on the windowsill in the sun. Was his phone battery solar powered? That certainly wouldn't work either. In this way he stood in front of the window shouting into the night, and we knew from the look in his eyes that he was at his wit's end at this moment. He took out the only bottle of water he had in the house, and a bag of biscuits and sat down on the table to eat. But how long would this food last? The next morning he woke up. Tragedy struck again when the only half bottle of water left, which had not been screwed on properly, and had been blown over by the wind, spilled all over, leaving him with no water to drink. The helpless man could only continue calling and breaking the door with various objects, but the door was still unbreakable. At this point, the man turns his attention back to the television, which he intends to throw down the stairs to get the security guard's attention through the sound. But do you think the man will succeed? The man was about to throw the TV downstairs, only to see him slowly stretch it out onto the balcony, and the next second, it fell straight down, and hit the ground hard. The security guard seemed to be a bit deaf and was lying on his bed without any reaction. But the man didn't give up. He found another cardboard box and toothpaste, wrote a distress message and threw it out of the window, but the cardboard floated and landed on the roof. Then the man wrote another one, this time still without success. Without toothpaste, he uncovered a cut on his hand and wrote in blood. But this time, luckily, the cardboard landed on the terrace of a house, and as soon as the owner came out to collect his clothes, he could see it. He stood at the window until late afternoon, when he finally saw a woman come out to collect her clothes, but because it was so dark, the cardboard was not found until the woman left. The man sat in front of the window in deep thought, completely forgetting that he had not eaten all day. He came into his room to look for biscuits and suddenly found a small mouse. The man turned his head and ran away, not realizing that he would hit the wall and pass out. When he wakes up, the water is actually coming from the kitchen, but he looks at the mouse's tail in the cupboard and keeps daring to go over, only to watch the water slowly run out. This time he found some materials and used them to make a simple slingshot. When the woman came to dry her clothes again, he used the slingshot to shoot at the terrace of the woman's house. This time he finally succeeded, and he rushed happily to the door, waiting for the woman to arrive. The woman then arrived downstairs.
यहाँ कोई रहता है?
कोई नहीं रहता।
कोई नहीं रहता यहाँ पे?
हमें 2 साल हो गए नौकरी करते हुए, इस बिल्डिंग में कोई नहीं रहता। अब जाइए।
The woman did not give up, however, and snuck in anyway, but when he was halfway up the stairs, he saw that they were empty and left in fear. At night, the man thought of lighting a fire on the balcony to call for help, hoping that those who saw it would call the police, but the fire grew bigger and the man rushed to put it out again. So the man went on for another day, and at night he found the biscuits eaten by a mouse. Hunger made him brave and he went to beat it with a stick, only to end up curled up in a corner in fear himself. It was not long before there was not even a drop of water left in the house and he lay helplessly on the floor, but just as he was about to give up, he suddenly heard the sound of rain coming from the window and he went to the window and tried desperately to catch it in his mouth with his hands. He then found all the containers in the house, removed the toilet tank and made a rain catcher out of the hose and sack from the tank. This day a pigeon flew onto the balcony, and he caught it with his homemade slingshot. It was not his intention, but he had to be ruthless in order to fill his stomach. Once roasted, he put the pigeon aside and went to the kitchen to get a plate, only to return to find the little mouse had come back to steal the food. Instantly enraged, the man chased the little mouse and beat him desperately before he was finally caught and put in a cage. He took the pigeon, which was half eaten by the little mouse, and ate it one bite at a time, not caring about getting dirty in the face of hunger. Another day passed and he realized that the balcony on the 30th floor was not fitted with a guardrail, and that if he could safely climb to the 30th floor balcony, there might be a chance of survival. Seeing hope, the man said he would do it. He found a piece of steel and cut the parapet, catching pigeons to eat when he was hungry, and when there were no pigeons, and drinking stored rainwater when he was thirsty. The man peeled out of the 35-story balcony, only to see him clutching the parapet with his hands, and climbing down bit by bit, taking extra care with each step, so that if he missed a step he would fall into an abyss of 10,000 feet. He was particularly frightened, but he had to do it. Soon, the parapet was no longer stepped on below, as there was no guardrail on the bottom level. The man hurriedly climbed back up, and secured his body, only to unbuckle his belt, and hang it around his neck, then slowly crouch down, holding the railing with one hand and removing the belt with the other, wrapping it around the guardrail and attaching it to the railing so that a safety rope was ready. Then he grabbed the belt and slowly began to descend, his whole body weight supported by only one belt, and he struggled to touch the parapet with his feet. But when he came down, he found that the glass door of the balcony was locked, and then he kicked at the glass door, which did not break, and nearly fell again himself. After standing firm, he continued to kick hard and finally kicked it open. Then, he quickly went to the door and pulled gently with his hand, and the door opened. In the end, the man managed to be rescued by himself. Later, the man returns to the house where he was trapped again, admiring the results of his initial adversity, destined to be alone and self-appreciative. No one will understand that you had that past.